Welcome to this on-demand session. My name is Dr. Betsy Diegel. I am a senior doctoral adjunct in the College of Doctoral Studies at Grand Canyon University. My presentation is titled Engaging Adult Students, Impacting Adult Learning Through Creative and Intentional Online and Face-to-Face Teaching Practices. I have spent most of my career working, teaching, and engaging adult students. So I've put this presentation together for a variety of reasons. It has a very strong theoretical aspect as well as tips and tricks that I've learned that are extremely beneficial to enhancing that deep engagement, which we all seek, of course, with all of our learners, but specific ways that we can keep our adult students in tune. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation and you're able to, regardless of the discipline, department, or courses that you teach, whether online or face-to-face, that you're able to add a couple of these areas into your academic toolkit to then teach adult students so ultimately they can benefit. Coined by Malcolm Knowles, who is known as the godfather of adult learning, is the term andragogy, which I don't believe is a surprise to many. It coincides with pedagogy, which that is the art and science of helping children learn. Andragogy gets at specifically ways through that scientific perspective that adults learn. There are a few assumptions that surround this, as well as discrepancies that we do see in the research about, is this the best way that adults learn? And no, it's like anything. Everyone has unique facets to their learning. But overall, based upon the foundation of andragogy, there are key components that have been proven through the research that can enhance adult learning. So very, very important key player is Malcolm Knowles. Key points from Malcolm's 12 principles of adult learning is, first off, and you can see them organized here, and they are in no order of importance by any means, but overall, adults need to be able to own that material and be responsible for their learning. They need that material explained and disseminated, not only in a variety of ways, but a way that they can understand it and make sense of it. We'll talk in a bit about how adults make sense based upon their life experiences, but adults want that control. And again, my disclaimer earlier, this may not be for every adult learner that you have in your classroom. Research is pointing to the majority of ways that adult students learn. So overall, they need to feel that they're responsible and in charge of that course content that we have set up in our various courses. Overall, that safe learning environment is absolutely crucial. If adults feel threatened, intimidated, if there is a hierarchy in your virtual or an on-ground classroom where they feel marginalized or non-inclusive, they will shut down. So promote a challenging, right, meaningful, because like all of us as adults, our time is very, very precious. We wear multiple hats. We're very, very busy. So ensuring that you have a course set up that is challenging and worth their time, which then obviously leads to them being able to be very action-oriented learners, which gives them time then to critically reflect over the material that you are presenting and requiring them to be assessed on, is certainly important. Adults don't want to feel that your course is disorganized or it has a lot of, quote, busy work in it where it's just filler time to do certain problems or reading excerpts out of a textbook. They want to see that meaning in their learning. They want to be challenged and they want to have time to critically reflect over the material so then they can get that ingrained in their long-term memory. This fourth box here is very, very powerful and something that I keep very close to home when I'm teaching. As the instructor, hence facilitator, hence shepherd of that learning process, do not do what the learner can do and do not ever decide what the learner can decide. That will extremely lend itself to creating that hierarchy in your classroom that is not beneficial to adult students. Overall, much like many courses in online learning, we are that facilitator, that gatekeeper of knowledge that we have to figure out ways to successfully disseminate that so all students benefit. You know, the power role of you being, you know, the doctor, the sage on the stage, the complete expert or repository of information needs to be diminished, and dialogue needs to be authentic and real. We'll talk about the importance in a little bit about them seeing you as human. They wanted you to be relatable and down to earth. Give learners an opportunity to have their voice. Let them speak throughout your courses. Learn from them as much as they want to learn from you. There are some assumptions that Malcolm Knowles coins that we still see that are extremely relevant today with adult learning, and they're very, and there's overall 12, but I picked out 6 today to really focus on, but certainly use the reference page here to dig into these as well as the other remaining 6 further. If we take them bullet by bullet, and you can check out in yellow there, that really is the overall characteristics that guides each of these assumptions. The first one is adults want to know why they have to learn something. Again, the whole concept of just having to learn it because I said so isn't good enough. They want to see how your course content ties into previous courses, as well as that future program, internship experience that they're seeking. They want that need to know something. Second, in blue there, transformational and self-directed are 2 extremely important areas that are always, we see in research, embedded into adult learning, creating transformational or hence change in the way adults learn in their classroom, as well as adults, as their foundation for learning, enjoy being self-directed. It's that curiosity that we want to manifest in your course and to come about in their learning. Their life experiences, even those negative life experiences, are truly the basis for their learning, and that is what they will bring to you in your classroom. Adults want to feel responsible. Most, and again, these aren't blanket statements for all of your adult learners, but more just looking at the majority. Most of them have a very strong self-concept. They know, in a way, exactly how they like things. They want to be responsible for their decisions. They like being involved in the planning, whether it involves choosing how they will be assessed or what they will be assessed on, involving them in on creating an attendance policy in your courses, for example, or giving them 5 choices on an upcoming assignment and having them select 2 of them, voting, polling on that. It's very clear in your class that you require that transparency and you value their opinion in their decisions. Next, the relevance piece. You know, adults, for the most part, when they're in your courses, are very ready to learn, whether they have trepidation because they've been out of school for years, or they question their math skills or their APA format. Regardless, they're eager and ready and want to sponge that information that you tee up for them in your courses. They are very interested in that relevant piece, though. They want to know why this material is important, and then from there, we then put it in a way that makes sense to them, that's relevant to their past, professional work experience or their personal lives as well. We see many of our students, their moms, their dads, their aunts, their caregivers. They wear a variety of hats like all of us do, and they can see relevance in course content that is relatable to those experiences. Next, think about problem-based learning, concept-based learning, team-based learning. That's how they orientate themselves to your course. They do not necessarily always benefit from rote memorization or memorizing a paragraph or reading as fast as they can in a book to then regurgitate information. Critical thinking and action reflection that surrounds a problem that they have to pick apart or decipher from one concept to the next will certainly benefit their learning. And lastly, this is very, very important, and it really we see in the research that differs from pedagogy, is adults respond better to intrinsic motivators, such as a collaborative classroom culture, feeling supported by you as the instructor, feeling a part of community, important to the university, versus just that A grade at the end of the course. We see that adults are more engaged if they can see that meaning behind the learning as you're supporting them throughout the way. Less motivated about just showing up to get that A or to check the box, so to speak, to move on to the next course. When we think about our own instructional practices, again, whether you teach undergraduates, whether you're part of, internships, graduate courses, in any type of program, all of us teach adult students from time to time. And I'd ask you to reflect on how transformational are your regular, when I say regular, comfortable, your go-to, your normal day in and day out teaching practices. If we look at the term transformation, we all know that that stems from some type of change. So how do we bring about change in adult student learning? If we look at Jack Meserel, and again, this is very dated work that still is very accepted in today's current times with our current adult students, we think about transformational learning. It is a process and it is developmental. Not all of our adult students are strong at it by any means. But if we can embed this in our courses, they certainly, like any skill, that skill becomes much stronger and more meaningful through time. But essentially, transformational learning, it starts with that disorienting dilemma. When you present that in your course, some situation, some type of scenario that challenges your learner's thinking. So when you set that up, that dilemma, that problem, you ask your students to then think about that. What does that mean? Ask them to conceptualize, from a personal and professional level. Allow them time to critically think and question their preconceived, we call them preconceived notions or underlying beliefs. It really brings what I think to like the top of a surface. I think of a big ocean, and bringing this problem to the top of the surface, which really questions their stereotypes, their preconceived notions or underlying beliefs. And through this process, can you get your adult students then to change or manipulate or modify that prior way of thinking? And if you can, that is what is called a paradigm shift in their understanding of the world, meaning you are able to open up their mind to smell the roses, right, in a different way, to go about that same action with a new frame or new way of thinking. And that is a goal of transformational learning for all students, not just adults. Can we get them to unpack that baggage and realize that they come to our classes with preconceived notions and stereotypes and their beliefs about the world? And can we get them to critically think and create that introspective questioning regarding their own beliefs and get them to change, even if it's just a little bit? We do this, through case studies, through real life examples happening in the media. It does require our learners, though, to be significantly engaged. But getting them to recognize what their prior beliefs are, and then from there, getting them to change their way of thinking that will impact their future actions. But again, this all starts with a disorienting dilemma. And I do this in my classes when I have students, and again, only if they're comfortable sharing, if they're feeling safe, if they're feeling our, learning environment is very collaborative, then I'll ask them to talk about a personal experience that they felt was very, a dilemma, very disorienting to them, a problem. And how then, because of that now, are they forever changed? A lot of students will talk about a divorce or a healthcare issue or failing their first course. And because of that life experience, they now have that paradigm shift in the way that they understand the world. They never see that same situation the same again. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. And there are a variety of examples that I have set up in a little bit that really get at how we can stem that transformational learning to be really consistent in our regular teaching practices. To support that change, that transformation in our classes and our learning environment, offer time for critical thinking. It's okay to have that dead air or that space where no one is speaking, where we can just, our students can sit, it's quiet, maybe you have a little music on, and can critically think for just a few minutes. You as the instructor provide that content. Introduce new ideas, allow them to journal, allow them to create a spot in your course from day one all the way to the last week of course, where they can then go back and reflect on personal views, critical assessment of initial course content, to now maybe then they notice that paradigm shift because of what you have exposed them to in your course content. Strive to always, regardless, undergraduate, graduate, create those learning communities. Allow time for students to get to know one another. And again, we are all crunched for time in our courses. All of us have a ton of course content that we need to get through. But it really isn't that tough through icebreakers, through classroom assessment techniques, where you can allow a few minutes here and there before break, after a break, starting a course, after an exam, online, teeing up this in a way on your discussion boards weekly or on our weekly reflection, where learners can engage with each other regularly. Again, each student is not going to find partnership or collaboration with every student in your course. We're human. We all are diverse in many ways, but they need to find ways to connect. Next, practice. Allow your students to practice recognizing frames of reference, using their imagination to what would be another scenario to this problem, for example, to redefine problems from a different perspective. Have them put on a virtual hat, so to speak, assign them a role and ask them to come up with a different outcome to that case study or that problem. Anything that you can tailor specifically to your course content that allows them to see things through a different perspective. And if we look overall, I'm a scientist, so like me, if you're like me, I like process and I like fluidity to things. If we look at this from a procedural standpoint, think of it as this three-step process. One, adult students have the ability to exchange ideas. They then implement those new ideas by engaging, assessing, writing down what their new perspectives are through that lens, and acknowledging their new belief. Again, is it a belief that they're going to practice from that day on? Maybe, maybe not. But it opens up their eyes that they can learn in new and different types of ways. And that then is what creates what Jack Meserow states is that paradigm shift in their learning. Again, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens through time. And the more that we can get them to critically engage and critically reflect with our course content, the quicker those transformational or change in their learning will come about. Let's shift gears and use transformational and self-directed learning as a foundation here. And let's focus on now motivation. Research shows that overall when adult students come to us, again, and we set up what the assumptions are, as well as the foundation of andragogy. When they come to us, our adult students overall are very, very, for the most part, we see as motivated. They're there, they want to learn, they're engaged. However, through research, we see that motivational problems exist if they do not connect to you. All stated, adult learners overall do not have those motivation problems, but overall where we see barriers, the problem lies in the relationship between the learner and those providing the learning opportunity. And it's not just always us. Some students connect better to us than others. But if research shows that if adult students cannot connect and we cannot create meaningful, purposeful relationships with our adult students, that learning could be marginalized. That starts too with their first experiences on campus as well. Their admissions advisor, going to various departments to get their questions answered, career service, services, the diversity office. If adult students get a bad taste in their mouth, so to speak, if they're not feeling respected or valued, or their time isn't well spent there, that again can create motivational issues in their learning as well. So try to answer as much as you can of student questions and be knowledgeable enough in your role that you can point students to the correct department or correct service or opportunity on campus. So again, they always feel valued. When we add another facet here to understanding how adult students learn best, think about emotions. And oftentimes I ask my participants, think about when you were a student, and many of us, in the audience currently may be students as well, adult students as well. So think about on that bad day when you came to class, or think about receiving the best news ever. Think about how throughout our day our emotions can really wax and wane. Emotions can be very, very positive. They can motivate our learning experience, but they also can impede as well. If students feel anxious, unsafe, they have fear, they discomfort, this all creates barriers in their learning. Emotions are very, very critical in how students make sense of our course content. So think about that from day one on the type of learning environment, again, whether online and how you have your virtual classroom set up and organized, as well as the physical space of that on-ground course. We as the leader in this learning situation can really use the power of emotions to affect their learning. If we are very motivated and passionate and humanistic, we are setting the example. If students can tell that we are frustrated, upset with the university, if we're texting during class, if we are having sidebar conversations with certain students where it makes other students feel marginalized, that all can impact and create barriers to student learning. So think about that and how you set up your courses and your actions in your courses. Creating a strong learning community can absolutely serve as an automatic support system where students can relate to other students in our courses. So keep that in mind. When we create and strive for community, and that's a huge buzzword today in higher education, is how are we connecting students? Connecting them to each other, connecting them to course content, connecting them to resources. We think of those academic as well as external experiences that our students are engaged in. And again, they all play a role in educating the whole student. So think about it on that first day of class. Do you do the icebreaker? Do you take the time for students to introduce themselves to you, to each other? Do you divulge personal information? Do students know that you're a mom, a dad, a caregiver, that you play in a band? What personal experiences and information do you allow your students to know about you? I like to strive to participate right in the icebreaker on day one with students. As we've all learned probably from past experiences, that we don't want to divulge too much to our students. We still are the leader in that situation. We want to unlevel the playing field though, so students don't feel intimidated or disrupted in their learning. We want them to see us as human, but we still are in charge overall in ensuring that our syllabi policies are met. The rules are being followed in our courses. Students want that out of you, but hence they want to know that you have, just as much life going on and multiple responsibilities and can still be as successful as they are. Think about, and again, I want you to consider the courses that you teach and how you can apply this in your various courses. Consider a group project at some point, whether formal or informal. Let students come together and develop a group contract. Let them assess each other in the group projects. Where group projects can get negative with adult learning is if everyone ends up with the same grade. Have them assign each other various roles. Have them create a group contract. Have them hold each other accountable. And then in that group contract, have them provide qualitative commentary at the end and how, their role went and how they perceive themselves situated in that group. Work to contribute your personal experiences. They want to know what you are an expert in, what you have a strong background in, you know, how you have overcome trepidations and obstacles in your life to get where you are at. Focus on engaging the entire class and exchanging resources, together. You know, create a repository in your classroom where students can dump information and they can use each other's resources. Set up entire class online discussions. I like to set up an hour a week and students know exactly when that is. I often rotate it to accommodate various, you know, work schedules and so on. So adult students can certainly regularly pop in there where I'm available to them. They're available to each other. Just because it's an online course does not mean parts of it should not be synchronous. If you don't have an extra hour to give in the week, consider a half hour. Consider Sunday evenings. You know, whatever works for you. Students want to see your face, even in an online discussion. They want to hear your voice. They want to feel safe and connected to you, that you really are an advocate in their learning, and that then arouses their self-confidence, their well-being. They don't feel as intimidated. You know, there's a less threat to perform if they feel you are right there alongside of them, engaging them, and that overall you just care, right, about them being successful. Let's do a quick temperature check, and I'd ask you to revisit this again, you know, midway through your course, toward the end of your course as you prepare for future courses. You know, do you lead with consistency? Do students know exactly what they're going to get, you know, each class period, or the way your online course is set up from week to week? Are you open? You know, do you say, yes, you know, John Jones, I made a mistake. You are correct. That is the incorrect points that I put for that rubric. You know, let them see that you make mistakes too, and that you're very open to learning just as much from them as they want to learn from you. Be willing to talk with them. Use encouraging comments, you know, that ABC method. Talk to them, or through written feedback, what they did great, what you would like, you know, what you saw was a huge, huge strength that they've, you know, progressed or developed throughout your course. Then go into the areas that you would like to see as developmental and improve the next time. Allow them, you know, do you allow that collective decision making? Do you allow voting in your classroom, even if it's for 5 points or part of an attendance policy, or allowing late work or an extension on something? Think about that. How collective are you in your practices? And lastly, which of course is part of the mission of GCU, do you demonstrate those faith-based actions? Do you know, promote regular prayer or, you know, psalm experts and so on throughout your, you know, weekly discussion threads? Do you put inspiring quotes in faith-based learning embedded right there with the course content, just to keep students' minds refreshed? Some direct examples which I feel can be applied to any course, whether any discipline, undergrad or graduate. Think about those informal and formal learning opportunities. When I say informal, those are learning opportunities that may or may not be worth points. They may be an extension of something formal where you just ask students to do that because you think it would complement a formal learning. We as adults, and this is a little bit of a sidebar conversation, but we as adults, we are constantly informally learning. Think about the last time that you just taught yourself something, whether it was how to blog, whether it was setting up your new cell phone, learning a new way to exercise, a new healthy diet you may have started. That's all informal learning. Adult students bring that and they're comfortable with that to our classroom. So why not embed it in your, you know, learning opportunities, which then of course stimulates transformational learning. So some examples to embed are group wikis. Wikis have really taken off in the past, you know, 5 to 8 years in higher education, where essentially it's an area where all students contribute in their writing. So students create sentences, which leads to paragraph, which leads to short stories, which leads to, you know, which can then go into a blog type post. These are all contributive, collective ways to create that learning community where all students have a part in creating an end product. I have found reflective reading journals where, let's say 2 to 3 times throughout the course, I have students submit a reflection on the past chapters or past content areas of the course where they apply their critical perspective of the reading. You know, what does it mean to them? Why is this important in the career that they're seeking? I would highly, highly suggest that. Third, synchronous group sessions. I talked about that before in your online course. If you can budget a half hour to an hour a week where students know that you're just available to them on Zoom, or set up something a little bit more formal where they know ahead of time that you're going to have a collaborative lecture for 5 to 10 minutes over this key area of the course because you feel it is extra important that they understand that before they develop their presentation or their project or their writing assessment. Contemporary issues assignments have always worked really, really well with adult learners in my courses in the past, where I give them the power to choose a topic in real life, in the media, that they feel is important. Many of them choose a topic that aligns to their dissertation or a career that they're eventually seeking, and they then can tie that real life situation to then the theory and the content in your course. But give them the power to choose, but have it be relatable to something current going on. And I don't think any of us could argue that there are enough items that are applicable and affecting higher ed that they wouldn't be interested in, that are currently happening, you know, in our educational world, that is much, much beyond our virtual classroom walls or the, you know, brick and mortar in our on-ground class. And lastly, I would also have you consider interviewing. Let students go out in the community and interview someone that they see as a mentor, or someone that they look up to or value, someone who is aligned to a learning outcome that you need students to accomplish in your course. You can give them, you know, an outline of questions, but have them develop questions. You know, what do they want to get out of that interview? I've seen a lot of power in that, as well as having folks come in and serve as a panel where they talk about their life experiences, and again, have it aligned to your course outcomes. Students tune into that. When they can learn from other people's life experiences and how they overcame challenges and barriers, you know, so they can learn about that scaffold or that ladder, because we all know that how we got to where we're at is not often from point A to point B. Me as an example, I would totally consider my professional background much more like a jungle gym, right? Instead of just from point A to point B like a ladder. So give opportunities for students to learn from people that they value and that they're interested in learning from. When we look at motivation as that stem in their learning, I want to point out 3, and of course there are many, many more, as a heart to consider when you are educating and leading those learning opportunities for your adult students. We've already talked about how adult students are very intrinsically motivated and less extrinsically motivated. You know, overall, trying to understand what our adult students, what drives them to pursue their learning. 3 important ones that I feel really complement this presentation well. First is McCluskey's theory of margin. We think about the 2 terms load and power, and I think of that in regard to work-life balance. What is your load? Your load is that intellectual strength, your load, I'm saying this backwards, I apologize. Your load is all of those multiple hats and responsibilities that are on our plate, so to speak. You know, think of your personal responsibilities, your professional responsibilities. That is your load that students bring into our classroom. And hence, on the opposite side, their power, their intellectual strength, their support system, their ability to critically reflect, their resiliency, their self-confidence. So if we look at the 2 together, what is the margin? You know, we say that adult students that have high power and low load have a really good margin, meaning hence they're much more likely to be successful in your course and be motivated to learn. when their power is high and their load is lower. The opposite, when they have low power, they're exhausted, right? They're overwhelmed. And their load is super high with multiple responsibilities, ineffective time management, low resources. That is an unmotivating factor for students to learn. So think about that when students come into the walls of your classroom, that load versus power and what is their margin. If you at all can help them understand, that and set up learning opportunities in ways that can help equalize out their power and load, they're much more likely to be motivated and have a clear head in their learning. Second, Boshear's adult learning motivational theory. In a nutshell, adult students are most motivated by the professional knowledge that they're seeking to gain out of your course. Recall that they make the most sense if we can relate that to past life experiences and create that transformational learning. But they want that professional knowledge so they're prepared for a future career, a future credential, or just prepared for the next course. That, as we see, is a very much a primary motivator. Now, what goes into that? The culture you set up, your inclusiveness, your support. And then lastly, we've all heard of Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. It's to the right there in a schematic. Research shows that adult students are not motivated by things that they've already satisfied. So for example, if they already know how to balance their checkbook, for example, they will not be motivated to learn that in your class. We want to target those hierarchy needs. So if we target their self-esteem and improving that, their self-actualization, are we getting adult students to achieve their full potential? Are we stimulating their creative thinking? That is the self-actualization piece that Maslow targets. That is how and why they will be motivated to learn. Most of them, their basic needs can be met. Hunger, thirst, safety. If those are established, research shows that we can satisfy those hierarchy needs by setting up courses that they can achieve their full potential. They can become more confident, better critical thinkers, and more creative. But I also want you to consider, because again, all of our learners are very multidimensional. Consider power in your course. Power from a definition perspective is the influence, right, one group has over another to bring about a change. Privilege is that unearned power that we see from one group over another. And then context is the setting that learning takes place in. So think about power, privilege, and context in your learning environment. I've included a tool, and it's a separate attachment to this workshop. It's Sladowski's Culturally Responsible Teaching Methods. And essentially, if we divide each course, each week, right, in a virtual online course, into the before instruction, the implementation, and then the after, we look at in gray these boxes that can all affect learning. From day one, from week one, what is the attitude of our adult learners? What are their needs? Are we taking time to gauge that and understand that? So then we can set up a course that is in line with our learners' needs. During instruction, how are we meaningfully stimulating them? What is their affect toward us? And that is the subsequent weeks throughout our course. And then once our course is over, we all know that our students fill out evaluations. But do our students then feel confident? Did we engender that competence in our students? So then they can apply that in their externship, their study abroad, their internship, their real life hands-on experiences, or the next course. And how then, after instruction, have we given them tools to reinforce their learning? So when they see some of those same concepts again in their job or in the next course, that they had the foundation to remember that and to make meaning of that. So the handout that's accompanied with this presentation breaks down these areas of the before instruction, during, and then after, and gives you a motivational strategy of an activity of how you can implement that in your classroom. So please seek out that attachment. and look at those activities and how you can implement those throughout your course so students can then bring that about to the surface and stimulate that learning so they then feel competent in that skill. Keep everything simple. Be you. All of us have a passion for our learners. That's why we're in education. It really is about the student. Be enthusiastic, prepare yourself, spend the time ahead of time so you know that when our students become in those virtual walls of our classroom or are in front of you sitting at a desk, that they know you're motivated, you're energetic, you're passionate, and you truly have interest in the course content that you're teaching. Be organized, be clear, stick by your policies. Let them, as much as you can, help and have ownership in some type of policy, or let them have power over a certain assignment in your course. Be available, stick to your office hours. Be the first one to class and the last one to leave. Establish synchronous online discussions. Be helpful to them. And stick to those policies. Be impartial. Work to create clear rubrics, exams that synthesize all parts of your course. Use more than one type of evaluation device. Let students, shine on you and show how multidimensional and multifaceted their learning truly, truly is. So some takeaways from the course. Overall, once again, adults need to see the meaning for learning something. Don't just keep them busy. Keep them deeply engaged. Promote that safe, organized learning environment. Put that time in. Be purposeful. Use active stimulation. And again, I've provided you with some, as well as those motivational strategies on the attached handout, Use active learning regularly throughout your courses. Let students get their hands dirty. Make them sweat, so to speak. You are not just the sage on the stage. Learn as much from them as they want to learn from you. And again, do not do for the learners what they can do for themselves. Some are, of course, much more autonomous than others. That's okay. Guide them to being more autonomous. And at the end, of course, have fun. Stay passionate. Remember why we are educators. This has truly been an honor to be able to disseminate this information. We have a huge, huge population of very, very talented and dedicated adult learners here at GCU, and I will challenge all of you to please think about what I have presented today from that theoretical perspective, as well as taking your past life experiences and implementing them into the classroom. Thank you.